High in the silent mountains, where clouds kiss the cold peaks and mist hides the narrow paths, there lived a poor shepherd boy named Albie. He was simple, kind, and loved his goats more than anything. Every day, he led them through green fields, listening to the wind and the sound of bells tied around their necks. The mountain village where Albie lived was peaceful but lonely, surrounded by deep forests where the sunlight barely touched the ground. The elders often warned children not to wander too far, for dark things were said to live among those trees, things that should never be disturbed. But Albie was not afraid. To him, the forest was home, until one strange afternoon when everything changed. That day, one of his goats disappeared into the thick woods. When he found it, something had bitten its leg. He didn't know then that this small wound would awaken an ancient curse buried deep in the mountains. From that night on, nothing in the village remained the same. The goat began to change. And soon, so did the people. In the quiet mountains of Black Hill, far away from cities and roads, lived a young shepherd boy named Albie. He was only 16, but he worked hard every day to help his old grandmother, who was the only family he had left. Their small wooden house stood on the edge of the forest, where fog rolled over the hills every morning like a moving ghost. Albie's life was simple and peaceful. He owned a small herd of goats that he cared for like his own friends. Every sunrise, he took them to the grassy slopes near the dark forest. He played his wooden flute as they grazed, filling the valley with soft music. The mountains echoed his tunes, and for Albie, that echo was his only company. The villagers liked Albie, but often warned him about the forest. They said it was cursed, that spirits of the forgotten dead still wandered there. Many years ago, an old man had disappeared inside those woods, and his body was never found. Since then, no one dared to go too deep. But Albie didn't believe in ghost stories. He had entered the edge of the forest many times, chasing his goats or collecting firewood, and nothing strange had ever happened. To him, it was just another part of nature. Still, there were nights when the wind sounded different, almost like whispers. And sometimes, when the moon was full, Albie felt as if unseen eyes were watching him from behind the trees. He tried to ignore those feelings. He had his goats to look after and his grandmother to care for. Life in the mountains was hard, but it was the only life he knew. Yet, one ordinary afternoon, something would happen that would change everything, something that would turn Albie's peaceful mountain world into a nightmare he could never escape. It was a bright, calm afternoon when Albie took his goats to graze near the edge of the forest. The air smelled fresh, birds sang in the trees, and the soft sound of bells from his goats echoed in the valley. Everything felt normal, too normal. As the sun began to dip behind the mountains, Albie noticed one of his goats, a white one named Luna, had wandered away. He called her name, but there was no sound, only silence and a cool wind that brushed against his face. Worried, Albie followed her tracks through the tall grass and into the forest's shadow. The deeper he went, the colder it felt. The singing birds had gone quiet. The air smelled strange, like wet soil mixed with something rotten. After a few minutes, he found Luna standing still near a tree. She was shaking. When Albie came closer, he saw blood dripping from her back leg. The wound looked deep, as if something had bitten her, but the marks were unlike anything he had ever seen. They weren't from a wolf or snake. It looked wrong. Albie knelt beside her, whispering softly to calm her down. He tore a piece of cloth from his sleeve and tied it around the wound. As he did, he felt a strange warmth coming from the bite, not like heat, but something alive, something pulsing. He looked around nervously. The forest was silent again, but Albie couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. The fog thickened between the trees, moving like breath. He quickly lifted Luna in his arms and started walking back toward the village. The sky had turned red with sunset, and shadows stretched long across the ground. That night, Albie would remember every sound, the rustling leaves, the faint growl in the distance, and the feeling that the forest had just claimed something from him, something it would soon come back for. That night, the mountain air was cold and heavy. Albie sat near the fire inside his small wooden house. His grandmother was cooking soup, while the injured goat, Luna, lay near the door, covered with a blanket. The wound on her leg looked strange. Dark veins had started to spread around it, almost like black roots crawling under the skin. Albie touched Luna's head gently. She didn't respond. Her breathing was slow, and her eyes looked glassy and distant. He whispered softly, "You'll be okay, Luna." But deep down, he felt something was wrong, something he couldn't understand. As the night grew deeper, the wind outside began to howl. The old window shook, and the fire flickered weakly. Albie's grandmother looked uneasy. She said in a trembling voice, "Child, you should not have gone that deep into the forest. That place, it's not meant for humans." Albie tried to smile. "It was just a bite, Grandma. Maybe a wolf." But before he could finish, Luna let out a strange low sound, not like a goat's bleat, but a growl. Both of them froze. The goat's body began to move in small jerks. Her eyes slowly rolled back, turning red in the dim firelight. A foul smell filled the room, like something dead and burning. Luna stood up, shaking, and stared at them with a wild look that no animal should have. Albie stepped back in fear. "Luna," he whispered. In that moment, the goat rammed her head against the wall, again and again, until blood splattered on the floor. Then she suddenly stopped, standing still, breathing heavily. The house fell silent. Albie's grandmother crossed herself and whispered a prayer. "It's not sickness," she said softly. "It's the mountain's curse." Outside, the wind howled louder, almost like laughter, as if the forest itself had heard her words. The next morning, the mountain was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds that usually sang at sunrise were missing. Albie hadn't slept all night. He sat by the door, watching Luna through the cracks of the wooden pen outside. She hadn't moved since the strange outburst. Her fur looked darker now, her eyes red like burning coals. When Albie tried to bring her water, she growled, a deep, strange sound that didn't belong to a goat. His grandmother warned him, "Don't go near it, child. That thing is not your Luna anymore." But Albie couldn't accept that. "She's my goat. She just needs help," he said, stepping closer. The moment he opened the gate, Luna charged at him with terrifying speed. Her head hit his arm, knocking him to the ground. Before he could react, she bit his sleeve and tore through the cloth. Albie screamed and pushed her away with all his strength. He stumbled back, bleeding slightly, his heart pounding. The goat's eyes locked on him again, filled with rage and madness. Then, suddenly, Luna turned and ran toward the village, moving faster than any animal Albie had ever seen. Albie shouted for help and ran after her. By the time he reached the first house, chaos had begun. Luna was attacking everything in her path, goats, dogs, even people. An old man tried to stop her with a stick, but she bit his hand, tearing flesh. The man fell, screaming in pain as others ran for safety. Villagers shouted, "It's cursed. Kill it." But no one could get close. The goat's strength seemed unnatural. Its body moved like it was driven by something unseen. Albie stood frozen, horrified. He realized this was no normal animal anymore. The thing that had bitten Luna had turned her into something else, something evil. And as he looked at the people screaming in terror, Albie understood one thing. This was only the beginning. By the next day, Black Hill Village was no longer peaceful. Fear spread faster than fire. The villagers locked their doors, whispering prayers as screams echoed from the lower streets. The goat, Luna, was nowhere to be found, but the horror she left behind was just beginning. The old man who had been bitten the day before now lay in his bed, sweating and shaking. His family tried to care for him, but he wouldn't stop muttering strange words in a voice that didn't sound human. By midnight, his eyes turned red, just like Luna's. Then, without warning, he attacked his own son. When the villagers heard the cries, they rushed to help, but it was too late. 2 more were bitten. And by the next sunrise, they too began to change. Their faces twisted, their voices deepened, and their movements became wild and unnatural. Albie couldn't believe what was happening. He watched from his small house on the hill, guilt crushing his chest. He knew all of this had started with him, with the goat he had brought back from the forest. His grandmother tried to comfort him, saying, "It's not your fault, my child. The curse was waiting. You only woke it." But her words didn't help. Albie could still hear the distant growls coming from the village at night, sounds that no human should ever make. Soon, the infection spread beyond control. Those bitten became savage, attacking anyone in sight. The once beautiful mountain village was now filled with broken doors, bloodstains, and terrified faces hiding behind curtains. The elders called it the mountain's revenge. They believed something dark and ancient had returned from the forest, punishing them for disturbing its peace. As fires burned through the village, Albie looked toward the forest's edge, where the mist moved slowly between the trees. Deep down, he knew the truth. If he didn't find the source of the curse soon, there would be no one left to save. For 2 long nights, Albie couldn't sleep. The screams from the village had faded into silence, a silence more terrifying than the noise. Smoke from burned houses rose into the gray sky, and the once lively paths of Black Hill Village were now empty. His grandmother had fallen sick too, her eyes red and her voice weak. She grabbed Albie's hand and whispered, "You must go, child." "And what has begun?" "The forest holds the answer. The same forest that took your goat." Tears burned Albie's eyes, but he nodded. He knew there was no other choice. Carrying his lantern and a small knife, he stepped into the misty forest, where the light of the village disappeared behind him. The deeper he went, the darker it became. The wind was still. Even the insects were silent. Albie followed faint trails of blood and broken branches, marks left by Luna the goat. His footsteps echoed on the wet ground, and every shadow seemed alive. After hours of walking, he came upon a hidden path between 2 giant rocks. Strange red symbols were carved on them, symbols that glowed faintly, as if painted with fire. Albie's heart pounded. The air smelled of death and damp earth. Following the path, he reached a cave covered with vines. From inside came the faint sound of movement, slow, heavy breathing. He raised his lantern, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The cave floor was covered with animal bones, old skulls, and the remains of dead birds. In the center, a deep hole glowed faintly with a sickly red light. On the wall, strange claw marks spread in every direction. And among them, Albie saw something that froze him completely, the same bite mark that had been on Luna's leg, drawn in blood. He realized then, the curse wasn't random. It was alive. It was waiting. Inside the cave, the air was thick and cold. The flickering light from Albie's lantern barely cut through the darkness. He could hear a faint sound, something breathing, slow and deep, from somewhere inside the shadows. The red glow from the pit pulsed like a heartbeat, lighting the walls for brief, eerie moments. Then, from the corner, a movement. A shape crawled out tall, twisted, and covered in black veins that pulsed like roots beneath its skin. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its mouth dripped with dark, thick fluid. It wasn't human, and yet it looked like it once might have been. Albie froze. The creature stared at him, its head tilting slowly, and then it spoke, in a voice that was half growl, half whisper. "Your goat was mine, and now you are too." The sound cut through him like a blade. Albie stumbled back, clutching his lantern. He looked around. Bones, blood, and firelight surrounded him. He realized this creature was the source of the curse, the thing that had bitten Luna. It was feeding on life, spreading madness through every bite. He had no weapon strong enough to kill it. But he remembered his grandmother's words, "Evil fears fire." Gathering his courage, Albie smashed the lantern to the ground. The oil spread quickly, flames rising around the cave walls. The creature screamed, a horrible, echoing cry that shook the earth. As the fire grew, Albie looked at the entrance. He could run, but if he left, the curse would continue. He turned back toward the creature, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "This ends here." He picked up a burning branch and threw himself forward. The cave exploded in fire and smoke, and the mountain roared like thunder. By morning, The villagers saw the smoke rising from the forest. The curse was gone, and the attacks had stopped. But Albie never returned. Some nights, when the wind blows down from the hills, the villagers still hear the faint sound of a boy's flute, echoing from the ashes of Black Hill. The curse of Black Hill ended the night the cave burned. The screams stopped. The fog cleared. And for the first time in weeks, the sun rose over the mountains. But peace came with a heavy price. The boy who saved them was gone. The villagers buried what was left of the forest in silence. No one dared to speak of what truly happened. Some said Albie's spirit still guarded the hills. Others believed the fire had taken both him and the creature together, sealing the curse forever beneath the mountain's ashes. His grandmother sat alone in her small wooden house, staring at the empty pen where Luna once lived. Every evening, she lit a small candle by the window, waiting for a boy who would never return home. Years passed. The story of the mad goat became a mountain legend told in whispers around fires, warning children never to wander too deep into the forest. Yet even today, when the wind grows cold and the fog rolls down the hills, shepherds sometimes claim they hear something faint. A flute. Soft, lonely, and echoing through the valley. They say it's Albie, still watching over the village, the boy who gave his life to end the darkness. And if you ever visit Black Hill on a foggy night, don't follow the sound of that flute. Because not every melody that calls your name wants you to come closer.